Hello, Facebook. This is another episode of the Muses. I am Chris Alicia. I'm going to be doing our opening today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I've got with me the lovely Katie and Steph. Kat is running a little bit late, but she'll join in as soon as she handles an emergency that she's got at home. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Muses, a show that brings the divine feminine from every possible aspect of creation. We are women that have come together from very, very different backgrounds to bring forward the new message of spirit, to talk about the topics that the world needs to discuss at this time, to talk about everything from the new age spirituality to current events, what's going on in our world and where we want the world to be. So as I mentioned, my name is Chris. I've got Katie and Steph here. You can check out our bios on the Facebook page. Please share this video out while we're discussing our topic today. Whoever shares out this episode the most will get a free 30-minute Akashic Record session with me. At the end of next week, we'll talk about who won that. So this week, we're going to be talking about a really cool topic. And the inspiration for this topic really comes from the media. My husband is a giant Fox News watcher, and I cannot stand the news. So he's constantly relaying these messages to me about how atrocious the world is and how everything is burning to the ground. So I realized all this is doing is fear mongering. So I really wanted to talk to the ladies today about fear, the greatest fears that they've had in the past that they've overcome, and the fears that they're facing today. Because the world around us is constantly trying to trick us into being afraid, into thinking that there is no hope for the future, that there is no point in life. And I call bullshit on that. I just do not believe that. Life is amazing. So ladies, before we get started, I just want to turn it over to you. If you have anything in your field you want to share with the audience or share with the crew, let us have it. Steph, how's your week been?
Oh, my week has just been fantastic. I've been eliminating fear from my field, and let me tell you what, it's amazing. It's amazing what happens in life when we come out of that vibration. Yeah. Oh, how about you, Katie? How's your week been?
I actually had a birthday on Friday, so woo! Yeah.
Happy birthday!
And I'm a Leo, so I got, the summer birthday, and Leos are usually all hey, one big party. But I have to say this one was, a milestone. It was the first birthday since I lost my son, and going in, talk about fear, I was trying to be open, but then also, expecting a lot of, emotional stuff to come up. But all in all, it was really, really beautiful. I ended up, oh, there's Kat. Hey, Kat, welcome. I'm like a little kid at heart. And so I still force everybody to get a birthday cake for me and to sing happy birthday. And then I make a wish, right? And I blow out my candles. And so I was, my wish that I was making, we were going to do that and then head out to a barbecue kind of graduation party for my son's friends before everybody goes their separate ways to college. And so I had made a wish, and it was basically just a wish that, my son and I continue to always stay as connected as we ever were. And that, he sends me, very clear, solid signs, of communication, so I remove all doubt, and I remove that layer of fear, like we were talking about. And so I made that wish, and then we immediately went down to this party, and it was the funniest thing. There were probably, several people, that were arriving, not a huge party. We were outside. Everybody had masks on. I just want to make that very clear. We were very COVID appropriate. But one of my friend's neighbors that I had never met before ended up stopping me on my way in. And we ended up having an hour-and-a-half conversation. And everybody's like, what is she doing over there? Why isn't she coming over to the party? But it was just very interesting. And we kind of got off onto this spiritual conversation. And he was, we were talking about, death and, our experiences with it. And a random person that I'd never even met before just happened to be leaving the beach and saw him. And she came over and she said, oh, excuse me, we didn't know each other. She said, I'm just going to give him a hug and, say hello. And it was the funniest thing because just the exact way he was standing, the exact angle I was standing, she had this navy blue hat on. And when she leaned in to hug him, the sun just hit her hat just so. And my son's name is Parker. And and it was just the way everything happened. It was like this, right like this in front of my face. I couldn't miss it. And it had in dark navy, you could barely see it. It had Parker Strong. And I just took my breath away because I wasn't expecting it. And Parker's kind of an unusual name, So I was like, whoa, like, what do I do? And I'm like, you can't let this moment go away. That you've got to ask her to take a picture of the hat. I mean, this is just beautiful. You just made this wish. And, Parker comes right in. And so I'm like, she's going to think I'm crazy, like with COVID, she doesn't know me. And so I said, hey, I just lost my son. His name is Parker. And I'm starting to like completely break down at this point. So I'm like, okay, great. Now she really thinks I'm a nut job. And I said, do you mind if I take a picture of your hat? Because it says Parker Strong. And that's just so weird. And so she goes, oh my God. And I go, I know, it's kind of crazy. And she goes, no, it's about ready to get even weirder. And I go, what? And she goes, I actually got this hat from a family friend that lost their son, whose name was Parker. It was just around the same time. He was 20, he was a junior in college, and my son had just turned 18. And so she turns the hat around, and on the other side, this was in color, so you could see it. There were 2 sets of numbers, and she said they did Parker Strong on the one side of the hat, and then on the other side, they did his high school football numbers and his college football numbers. Oh. And it was just the 3 of us, random strangers that had never even met before. I mean, we literally were all standing there with like goosebumps, like head to toe, because we knew that we were just part of this universal synchronicity that you can't make this kind of stuff up. She's like, I'm not even supposed to be here. She goes, I literally just got a text from my friend. I'm supposed to be on the other side of the mountains fishing. She goes, and I was driving by and I don't even know why I stopped, but I stopped for some reason. And now I know it was to come over here so that all this played out. And it's these little moments like that where you really see how small we all are in this little dance of this beautifully orchestrated life, and just, when you're just awake and aware enough, you can see these beautiful moments, even in the midst of tragedy, for what they really represent, the contrast of the beauty and in the pain and, all of it. And so I feel like all 3 of us were like, okay, that was like, one for the record books. It was really, really beautiful.
That's so cool. And imagine if you had been caught up in the fear.
Yes.
What is she going to think of me? What is she going to say about me? How is this going to sound? How am I going to look? If your fear had come in that moment and shut down the interaction.
And it did. And I have to say, I'm so proud of myself because typically it was so out of character for me, because typically when that started to come up, I'm like, I can't ask her for a picture of her hat. Like, it's COVID. She's gonna, she's not gonna want to touch me or, me coming near her. And I'm like, okay, maybe just not, you go into that whole self-dialogue, like maybe just let it go. But then I'm like, no, I can't, I got to push through this, right? Or I'm never going to have this beautiful moment that ended up getting more and more beautiful, because in the end, it wasn't just me that was affected. It was like them. Like, she literally was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just took part in a miracle. And I'm like, you kind of did. It was kind of beautiful. So thank you, Steph, for recognizing that and reflecting that, because that was a moment of self-growth for me.
You think about that exchange, and Steph, you're so spot on. That exchange dealt with some of the biggest human fears that we have. And hey, Kat, we're not ignoring you, I promise. How are you doing? Welcome. We're talking about fear today. Well, you think about the big fears that you really touched on that day. One, the fear of losing a child, which is one of the greatest fears that a human can have. The fear of being alone.
Yes.
The fear of being seen as foolish, being judged. And you saw those fears, went through them, and the universe gave you this just magical experience, not just for you, but for the people around you. And we think so often, not just linear, but it's about us, right? I don't want to look like a fool. So when
Mm.
I get downloads of information, I don't want to share this because I'm going to look crazy. But if you do share it, who are you paying a service to? Who are you paying it forward to? What are they getting from the exchange? I think that is absolutely stunning on just so many different ways that you put yourself out there against the biggest fears that a human can have. You're a badass. I hope you know that. I know you don't,
I
but you
don't.
completely are a badass.
Thank you. Just keep telling me that. At some point, it will click.
Here.
But I will say, the funny, that's not the right word, but the interesting thing that I've noted in this twisted, way my life has gone the last year, this is, like you said, I mean, even doctors are like shuddering in front of me and going, oh my God, losing a child is literally the worst thing that, a human can go through. And I'm like, that's really not what you want to hear, from your doctor. You don't want to be that person. But it's just interesting because it puts you in such a place of vulnerability that you are so broken open. Even if I try to hide the fact of what just happened, the entire city knows. I swear to God, people I haven't even talked to in 10 years. It's like everybody knows, and nobody knows what to say or do in that kind of situation. So it's almost like you've got this carte blanche where you can say that it's this opportunity in a weird way to push through a lot of these fears, because nobody's going to judge you. Even if I say something crazy, I think they're just going to go, oh, she's grieving. She's not right. So it is interesting, because I mean, normally I wouldn't have asked to, in the middle of COVID to do something like that, but I thought she's going to understand. Who would not, have compassion for somebody that's just lost a child? So it's been, that's probably where I've had the most growth.
Mm.
This is such a beautiful topic today. So sorry if I'm extra chatty, but it's just so in my radar of what's going on in my field.
Oh, chat away. I'm sure a lot of people resonate with that, especially given what's going on with the corona and with the riots and everything else. That mortality is really on the top of a lot of people's heads. And we talked about this at the end of the show last time, and we've promised to now record those conversations because we keep talking after we stop going live. The world is so frightened by death and those real human limitations that we start looking at all of life from such an emotional, fear-based place. All of our decisions are now made from that fear optic. We're scared of getting sick, so now we're not going to talk to each other. We're not going to make eye contact with each other because, heaven forbid, the crone floats across the park and goes into somebody's eyes. It's just amazing to see how we let fear take over every aspect of our lives instead of going through it and saying, you know what, I have faith that this is going to work out the way it's supposed to, and that this is happening for a reason. We completely shut down. Like, oh God, I got to protect the vessel. Give me my mask. It's an amazing time for humans.
It really is. I've talked about what's in your space this week. I just went through it. My sister, I only have one family member left, and it's my sister, and she's back in the Midwest, and she is mentally disabled. She's got a lot of psychological problems, and she really struggles, and she's just completely based in fear and anxiety and a lot of things, because of what she has to deal with. And so she really has no friends. She's got maybe one or two, people that check on her, friends. And one of them had gotten really sick, and she ended up, in bed, and the doctor said, we should do a COVID test. It takes 3 to 5 days. And my sister had been out with her like a week prior, and she wasn't sick at all. But Oh my gosh, my poor sister. So of course, they just give the typical conversation like, well, you probably should self quarantine, until you get the test results. But I spent the entire weekend, she was having like almost a nervous breakdown every day. And she's thinking she's going to run out of food and, just, you know, I'm sure all these natural things, like it's easy for us on the other side of things to go, oh, don't worry about it. You're fine. It's probably just going to be the sniffles if you get anything. But it really gave me like a firsthand look into, oh my gosh, what must go into, people's brains, playing this out and everything they see on the news. And like you said, Chris, she's like your husband. She's got CNN and Fox News playing 24/7. And I said, the first thing you have to do is turn off the news. I mean, it is what it is. You've got to wait.
Say that a little louder for the people in the back. Turn off the news.
If you watch the news and you don't even realize it. She's like, well, I just have it on in the background and, I'm buzzing around the house, but I'm like, it's permeating your subconscious. And so it's almost like that law of attraction, when you are surrounding yourself in just that, and it's not even your own fear necessarily. It's broadcasting, everybody else's fears. But when you're basking in that, when you're bathing in that, you can't help but when you go outside, and you look at somebody sideways and you're like, oh my gosh, I went down the wrong way at the grocery aisle. Oh my gosh. And it's just so sad because she was literally bringing on a heart attack. And sure enough, this morning, right before the show, the friend got the test results back and they were negative. And, it's going to probably take my sister another 3 days just to come down, and so I was trying to explain, like, we don't even realize the physical, mental damage that we do to our bodies, because all of this is happening kind of on a level that we're just not even consciously aware of. But they say most disease, if not all disease, starts with stress of some kind that ends up leading to inflammation, usually of some kind. And that's kind of like what really starts the process. And if you want to take that into a spiritual context, like I do biofeedback, and so, we do a lot of energy field work. They say that usually what you physically manifest as an illness or disease is in your energy field for probably a month or plus, at least in an emotional state of some kind. And so if you can learn to be more in touch with your body and your energetics and that nonverbal type of communication, you are so much more in control of your own space instead of letting the news or other people impact that.
Absolutely. And I know both you and Steph are into the DNA and what fear does to your body. You have a physiological response, that fight or flight, which is there to make sure you can outrun a dinosaur or whatever. But it's not meant to be a long-lasting thing. It's short bursts. If you stay in that field of life or death, fight or flight for long periods of time, it chemically changes your body. Yeah. And that's why I was like, disease spelled with a hyphen, dis-ease. You're living in a state that your body is now like, I'm threatened all the time. I don't know what to do. I've got to shut down every other function just to make sure I survive.
Oh, and think about how manufactured most of it is.
Yeah.
Because if we take ourselves back to a pure natural state, the only thing we have to be afraid of is being chased by something.
Right.
Before we get all of the technology and the hyper communication and the...
And my husband is exactly what your friend was saying. He has it on his earbud and he tells me, oh, I'm not even listening to it. It's in the background. I'm just listening for the updates.
It's programming you.
Oh, I completely agree. They're feeding you. It's in the tone. It's in the music. It's in those, the news alerts.
It's everywhere.
The red text and the blur. No, you're being conditioned to think the world is dying. The majority of the world are not racist, murdering. I don't even know the right terms for it, but they make you think that the entire world is out to get you. And you got to buy toilet paper, or it's just,
Yeah, I don't know where that even started from.
I have no idea. I showed up to the grocery store and it was out of toilet paper. I had no idea that they would make a run on toilet paper.
I have a friend that works for the cruise industry. And so when things very first started to happen, and some of the cruise ships were starting to get, cases and having to kind of stay out on the water, until they could kind of figure out what to do. I remember asking her, I said, oh my God, of course, first thing I said was, did you guys were they running low on food? Because, cruises pack a certain number of days of food. And she said, oh no, she said, we had plenty of food. We could have been out there, for however long. But she said, oddly, the things that they ended up running low on were like toilet paper. And she named a couple other things off. And we were talking about, I guess because that's such a bulk item that it takes up enough space on a cruise ship that's limited to where they want to, keep that down. So I don't know if maybe people that were on cruises, where did that start? I don't know. It's just random.
We're very mob mentality still.
Yeah.
And I think that generates from the fact that, we are all energy and we are connected. So we can feel each other, even if most people aren't conscious of that. So when that fear reaches such a level on multiple countries that it's now permeating the conscious field, all of a sudden somebody in Russia decides toilet paper is running out, and that just sends a lot electronic messages through the conscious wire. Oh crap, get yourself some toilet paper. I don't know. That might just be a theory.
Hey, it's plausible. I will say though, in human design, you were talking about, just us having these innate fears, and part of human design takes into account, our energy centers, our chakras, right? Our energy hubs. And there are 3 centers that do have the capacity for awareness. And these centers also carry fears. And these are kind of where the fears are housed on an energetic level. And so we all have different genetic, DNA, activations that might be turned on in me, in one way and Kat in another way. And so the 3 centers that deal with fears are the, we call it the Splenic Center, but it's basically the oldest awareness center. It's kind of what we started out, with evolution is, cavemen, the true fight or flight, what an animal instinct would be. And so those are going to house different fears that are related to survival, or like a fear of the future, some people just, am I going to have enough tomorrow? They're always working today, but they're not living in today. And then as we evolved and we started to kind of hit the Industrial Revolution, if you will, the awareness shifted from, because we pretty much at that point had we could survive, right? We've mastered that. We've got housing, we've got, communities, whatever. And so we went into the second center, which is the Ajna Center. And that is where you conceptualize thought. And so that's kind of where the Industrial Revolution came into play, because once we went into that center focus, that is your mental anxieties. So instead of having the fear of survival, we had all of this, think about it, in the last 150 years, how much advancement we've had conceptually, as far as technology, science, medical advancements, all of that. However, that carries certain mental anxieties. And it's just really fascinating when I start looking at people's, energy layouts, and you can see, what innately is turned on in them. And when you bring that to people's awareness, because they have the capacity for awareness, it usually it resonates with them on a very deep, deep level. And then as we are progressing, we are moving into the third awareness center of evolutionary, human development, is considered the solar plexus center, which houses our emotional system. So now that we've got, all of this technology and, all this conceptualization focus, eventually, and really it's starting to happen now, we're seeing the start of a shift of global humanity, right? And, hopefully with the right attitude, we will spearhead it in the right direction. But the emotional center houses our connection to spirit. Emotions are energy in motion. I mean, that is really when you experience deep, profound emotion, think about it. That's your spirit really feeling something on a deep energetic level, even without words or communication. So that's more of a nervousness, versus the mental is more of a mental anxiety, thought process. So this is going to be like a nervousness of different types of fears. So there really is a scientific approach so that you can see, okay, in my chart, I have, this fear over, on the survival level. I'm aware of this fear, like playing out in my mental field. And there's different remedies and approaches for these fears because they're based in different things. And so I think I always say like awareness is everything, when you can just, it's not that your fears, I don't know, to some extent, yes, you can master your fears, but to some extent, if they are innately turned on in you, they're always going to be a potential trigger. However, through awareness and practices and balancing that out, you really can truly overcome your fears,
Do you ladies have any inborn innate fears?
I can't think of any. You know what? That's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie. I lie. I'm a liar. When I am performing solo, be it a speech, be it vocally, it doesn't matter what it is. If I'm all by myself, nerves, sweating, anxiety in my chest, just I can't, my human doesn't know how to process that.
So what do you do when you feel that fear cropping up? Because you're a pastor, a preacher, so you obviously do this.
So I do it weekly.
Way to face your fear, girl.
Yeah, I mean, I have become so comfortable in that context that doesn't make me nervous anymore. I guess it's for me just been facing it head on.
Yeah.
More than anything, putting myself in that situation where I'm intentionally making myself uncomfortable to process whatever it is that I'm holding on to or that I am believing about myself in that moment. That's not real. Yeah. Because I've been told over, and that was a weird part of it for me. That, I guess, for me was I'm going to call it weird because it was a strange experience to get feedback from so many people about my call and be told over and over, you're such a natural at this. You know what I mean? When you hear those things and it doesn't resonate with your experience of being in that moment, it's like, did I have a different experience than you did? Well, of course I did. Of course I did. But to see it from other people's perspectives in that way helped me to kind of flush some of that out, because you hear it over and over, you have it mirrored back to you over and over, and you start to realize that it's not yours. What you're feeling, what you're believing about yourself isn't real, and the feelings that you're feeling aren't really, probably they weren't even mine. They weren't my feelings. It was just an agreement that I made with myself a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it amounted to a whole lot, not a whole lot more than that. So that for me was a big part of it.
I've noticed when people are reflecting different things to you over and over again that you don't see within yourself, it's there, but it's on a subconscious level. And that's like, you guys have all seen the human design. It shows you what you're consciously aware of and then what you're unconsciously aware of. And that's the beauty of it. Once you can kind of really bring all of that to the surface and own it, which you have learned to do, then you become whole, right? Then you become your true, pure potential of what you can do. So that's helped me now, instead of when people say something and beautiful, nice way of reflecting to you, your gifts and your talents, instead of poo-pooing it, I now pause and I go, no, I need to sit with that. Because if they're
That's
seeing
exactly
it,
right. That's
yeah.
exactly right. And how many times do you shut it down when somebody says, oh, you're so good at this. Oh, you're what, the words when you speak, I could listen to you all day and it really resonated with me. I felt like you were just talking to me
Oh,
over and over and over. That would be something that would come forward for me. Someone would pull me to the side and go, I don't know how you knew what I've had going on this week. You know what I mean? And it's like, whoa, okay. I get it. I get the message. Finally, you start to see it because you can't ignore it when it happens over and over. I would try. I would try to ignore it. I would try to fancy up some kind of excuse for myself, why there was some wild synchronicity that showed me the truth over and at least a couple of times. I would try to brush it back under the rug and be like, oh, well, it was just this or it was just that,
yeah.
But it happens over and over. Wow, you see things a little bit differently. It triggers that in you.
Yeah, you got to wonder where that fear comes from. They talk about public speaking. People would rather have a root canal than make a speech in public or something outrageous. Like they'd rather walk across the desert without any water. And I definitely felt the same way when I joined the military. I was put into a briefer position. So every morning I had to brief work to these colonels and generals, and my legs would be completely freaking shaking. And they would come up to me at the end and be like, oh, excellent job. You look so confident. Like I'm vomiting before I come in here every day. I'm walking, like pacing while I'm practicing what I'm going to say. And the fear never goes away. I think it almost becomes like an adrenaline hit.
Yes. You rechannel it. Yes.
You get kind of excited. You're like, I'm going to shine. I hate it, but it's a moment for me to really come forward and face my fears. But you got to wonder where that comes from, because children are not afraid to speak in public. If anything, they're like tapping on your shoulder. Why aren't you paying attention to me? In front of crowds of adults. So I wonder where that fear comes from.
I think it's inclusion. I mean, I remember even when I started to go to school in kindergarten, like you started to notice like, oh, when we sat down to have our little milk and cookie break, those people are all sitting in a circle together, and I'm over here. Gosh, I sure want to be in that circle. And then you go over and you sit in that circle, but sometimes you might just be telling a story and somebody looks at you sideways and you go, uh-oh, are they going to kick me out of the circle because I said that, and so you start to like develop like that judgment fear. I don't know. That's what I kind of relate to. I'm curious, Kat, like, because you deal with animal communication and, animals are so in touch with their fear. Like, do they ever communicate about that? Or do they give any tips of how, because it's so present in their field? Are they on a conscious level where they can manage that?
I don't find them to be that much different in that arena than the human animal is, to be honest with you, when it comes to fear. If they're feeling fear, they're feeling fear and it's present. I guess the place where it's different is if the fear isn't overwhelming, they do a better job of moving out of it, and kind of, they're better at being present in their bodies and present in the moment. And letting go of things, especially once you suggest to them that possibility. But I have communicated with animals that are so engulfed in fear from something that is going on that they won't even talk to me. It took, there was one incident where it took 45 minutes to get him to turn around and even face the direction. And begin to share, because there was something going on in her life that was so scary to her that she couldn't figure it out. She didn't know what it was, so she didn't trust anybody. So they sometimes do the same kinds of things, which I would call generalize the fear out to other things. But I think, with fear and anxiety, generally speaking, what I always try to do, what I always suggest is be where your feet are. Literally look at your feet and ask yourself, where are my feet? Where am I? What is going on around me right now? Because I find most fear lies in the past or in the future that hasn't happened yet, not in the exact moment that we're in. And if we can be where our feet are and look around and breathe and know you're okay in the moment, a lot of that just dissipates.
Yes, one thing I've learned from being around mental illness my entire life is that, they say depression is fear of the past and anxiety is fear of the future. And that's like with somebody that's going into a panic attack, or, you have to just get right into your body and right into what is happening right now. Because 99% of the time, what is triggering them is not happening right now. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so that's what I would say.
You have a fear you want to share with us, Kat? Any fear that you've overcome or are still playing with?
I'm dealing with a big one right now, actually. That's why I was late today. I have a dog that was diagnosed with diabetes, and I don't know a lot about diabetes, and I'm learning that we're taking the crash course. And you manage that with insulin. The body isn't, making insulin. I think most people know this. And so you have to time insulin with dogs because you can't prick them all day, every day. You have to spread meals out 12 hours apart. And it's important that they eat at that point and that they eat all of it and that it stays down. And so you wait a little bit. You don't wait very long at all, but you make sure they eat their meal and then you give them the insulin. And our dog threw up his his meal about an hour, maybe an hour and a half after eating, which means he now has a ton of insulin coursing through his system and no food to offset. We had a full-on meltdown. We both panicked. We didn't know what to do. We couldn't get through to the vet. There's been so much to learn so quickly that we haven't realized what we haven't asked, just trying to deal with what is in front of us right in the moment. And so really weren't prepared for that event. Dealing with schedules and commitments and God, is this an emergency? And what do we do? And no appointments at the vet. And that state, so here's how I dealt with that state this morning. I just freaked out completely. Didn't handle that like I would hope that I would. That's obviously fear-based. That's all that is. Everything that came into that interaction, that conversation, the decision-making, all of that. So there are circumstances in which where we get to see the little gift where you get to see like, okay, well, when things are exactly how you think they're going to be, yeah, you're pretty good at this. And when they're not, and you don't have any idea what to think, is this an emergency? Is this, just don't know, and don't have a good plan in place for how to deal with it. So there's something going on there. And with the benefit of a little bit of time and some hindsight, I'm sure I will figure out exactly what was operating there that sent me into such a spin, but I really did. So not proud of that one.
Don't judge yourself.
I actually think that is so important for people to understand, that it doesn't matter how far into spirituality you go.
Yeah.
You're here to experience humanism, right? You're here to get knocked down. And that fear, and that's why I always love that analogy of those little punching bags, those old blow up punching bags. That is what life is like. You keep getting knocked down, but you're going to keep coming up. Now, the more you learn and grow in spirituality, the more joy you fill your heart with, the faster you pop back up. But that doesn't mean you're not going to feel fear or panic or pain. I mean, that's why we're here. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's just honest. That's what we're here to experience.
Yeah. I love the analogy of the punching bag. It's a good one.
That's how I think of myself all the time. I'm like, just keep knocking me down. I got nowhere to go. I've got a weighted bottom. I'm going to pop right back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and I know, Kat, you experienced this as well when diagnosed or waiting for the diagnosis with cancer. I found a lump in my breast back in my late 20s. And I remember going to the doctor and them going through that series of tests. And the biggest fear wasn't even death, it was the unknown.
Yes.
Like, what the hell am I going to do? What is this going to change? What is this going to affect? Is it going to, am I going to be, is it going to be benign or is it going to be cancer? If it's cancer, what next? What do I have to do? Those what ifs, those unknowns are horrifying. You
Mhm.
feel so out of control in every single aspect of your life. And the world around you, just like Katie was saying, just makes you spin a little bit faster. They want to tell you their stories about how someone they know had cancer and died, or that cancer is caused by drinking wine, or if you hold your phone too close to your head, it causes cancer. It's that fear is such a human reaction. And I don't think there's any state that you can get in and still be human where you don't feel that fear of the unknown. I
Yeah.
don't know that Buddha or I can't even imagine Jesus or Mary Magdalene did not feel fear going through their journeys. I just cannot fathom that. You know, it's such
Yeah,
a human part.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, how you can't be here without it. It's part of, you know, you've got your brain, you've got your heart center, you've got your gut center, right? You've got these centers. Fear originates, for the most part, in my opinion, here, almost always in your head. And it's not a navigational tool. It's a safety tool. And if you're on a dangerous plane, and this is a dangerous plane, you know, there are things here that can take you out. And if your journey matters to you, and we're designed to have it matter, then you're gonna feel it. It's part of the computer that is required to be here.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was Cryon or I can't remember who was talking about the different worlds that souls can go to. Said you can incarnate on different worlds depending on what you need to learn. Now, if you need to learn how to deal with big physical burdens, there are planets with huge physical struggles, like just extreme weather. There are worlds of extreme intellectual challenges or emotional challenges. Earth was one of the ones that was extreme across the board. And it's extreme in all those different elements so that we can grow faster. You grow exponentially faster the more fear you conquer, the more pain you conquer. So the more you're able to stand up when you're afraid of public speaking, the faster you are going to grow as a human. And that's what we're agreeing to when we come down, is to deal with just really extreme levels of fear.
Yeah, I'll share a story for what it's worth. When I was going through my Qigong instructor certification training, it was a 2-year program. And Qigong, at least for me, I mean, it's a martial art. It opens you up on a level, at least for me, like, you know, nothing else. So it was interesting when I first, like literally like the first day that I had started the training, we did weekend seminars. I had this interaction with spirit, what have you, and it said, remember, you asked for this. And the very next day, I thought, oh, what did I ask for? Like, oh, like enlightenment or, you know, like spiritual growth, you know, like this is gonna, oh, thank you. And then the next day, I am not kidding you, my life just slowly just started to fall a freaking part. And so I struggle with that. I was like, here I am trying to further my spiritual growth. I'm like, you know, trying to do the right thing. Like, why is all of this shit happening in my world? And I heard acceptance. And I was like, acceptance. And at this point, my son was really, really starting to struggle and, you know, just really starting to see how out of control things are, you know, and we are all control freaks, right? We want things to go our way, you know. Anyways, I was like, acceptance. So I you know, thought about that as I'm going through my training. And I came to the conclusion that, you have to, if you really want to give if you really want to, elevate, yourself or whatever, or your amount of openness, is you do have to be open to, just being the observer of what plays out in front of you, and detaching enough where you aren't having your emotions control your life, or like we were talking, your mental anxieties or your fear of survival, all of these things. And so, I got through that. And then along the way, I asked again, what is going on, and I heard, next is surrender. And I'm like, surrender. And again, it's just, it played out, at least in my experience, that, you have to surrender, that you can't control anybody else's life. You can control your own to a certain extent, but you know what I mean? Like, we don't know if we're going to cross the street in 2 hours and a bus is going to come by and hit us. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, there's a certain amount of destiny and there's a certain amount of free will. And so it was just all playing out in this extremely dramatic way. My son was in and out of the hospital, constantly. And I'm just desperately not wanting to surrender and accept. And so it's funny. I finally, felt like, okay, I'm accepting, I'm coming to terms with, things might not turn out optimally with, this situation with my son, I could tell. And I was trying to prepare for it. And I was trying to let go and let God, as best as I could, and my human self. And in the midst of this, I graduated that program. And I remember we had to do these thesis papers, right, of what we learned. And so I was putting my thoughts together, and that's how this all, I recognized it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was like the universe was teaching me surrender and then teaching me acceptance, and I'm trying to get as close to these virtues as I possibly can, but we are all still human. And then we started, like, a few months later, kind of a more in-depth, after you got through that program, you could go further into this energy management assessment series. And so just when I thought I was done, right, I started the series, and sure enough, I don't know what happened, but it was like right the day I started the series, or, not that much thereafter. And I must have asked a question or something, because I heard the universe come in and they said, now we're going to work on trust. And I just was like, oh no, I don't want to work on trust. No, I'm good. Because I knew at this point, like, if they're throwing something out, boy, it's going to be a wild ride. And I lost my son. And I get up every day and I struggle with, do I want to be here? This is a tough realm. And if you don't have meaning and purpose, you know what I mean? And clarity and, all of that, like, it's easy to kind of just go, no thanks, like, I'm done. But I think when you speak of Buddha and you speak of Jesus and you speak of some of these enlightened beings, they had that level of trust and faith, that, not to, get religious on you guys, but, even being nailed to the cross and having that trust that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is not the end, and there is a bigger picture to this story, and all of that. I don't know. I'm just telling you what's coming to my field, and obviously I'm still working on trust, but it's definitely front and center. This is kind of what God and me are dealing with.
Yeah. That brings up an awesome point. And I think this is where religion not gets it wrong, but where it's limited is it's not having trust in some outside deity to take care of you. You're having trust in your own divinity, that you are here for a reason, that these things are happening to you for a reason, and that you have the strength to get through it. Not only did we sign up for these lives and these struggles to grow a certain aspect, a certain way, but we knew we could handle it when we did. So getting to that dark night where you're questioning whether it's worth it, whether, I mean, I know that feeling intimately. Having faith that you are meant to do wonderful things and that you are a divine being is what gets you past that fear. You're not looking to anybody else to do it for you. You know that you're strong enough to do it, that you are a divine being, and nothing can get in your way. It's going to turn out exactly the way it's meant to.
And that's how somebody, a master that I studied with, had explained enlightenment. Truly, when all pieces of your self, your soul, your whatever, come together, all lifetimes, all encompassing, and you stand fully in your power, and you no longer reach to anything externally, to rely on. And that is the detachment, right? That is that straight channel of, I know whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm saying is, it's in direct alignment with what I'm meant to be doing. And I just thought, wow, that's so interesting. So you just nailed it, Chris. You just nailed it. Not looking outside yourself.
Yeah.
Self-empowerment.
Absolutely. I don't take credit for that one either. That one's spirit too, but
when you hear the same thing multiple times, that's when you really start to go, okay, that's truth. That's a core truth. Like, pay attention, people. There's a reason you said that today.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with fear of judgment, fear of death, fear of loss. Those are all external elements that we have an illusion of control over. But the truth is, if you're comfortable here, does their judgment matter? Will the loss matter? If you understand the bigger picture, what of those fears are real? I don't know.
Self-imposed limitation.
Yeah.
Self-imposed limitation, and also sort of like miscalculation or misjudgment in the moment, because really there is no such thing. There just is no such thing as good or bad. There isn't. It's all perception, and that's all it is. Because the things that sometimes we think are really bad end up in hindsight being the best things that could have happened to us, and vice versa. It's just all perception. There's no such thing. It's opportunity is really what it is. Anytime something new comes into your field, it's opportunity. And what are you willing to invest? What are you willing to grab a hold of? What are you willing to see?
Yeah. And I want to thank Melinda's sharing on the video. She's got a couple good quotes here. She says, "Fuck everything and run, or face everything and rise. We get to choose," which I think is a wonderful bumper sticker if I've ever heard one.
I love that.
But she says later on that when we're making our plans, we don't have the emotional attachment. When we're making our plans for life, we don't have the emotional attachment. So when we come into this life and we experience it, we often ask ourselves, what was I thinking? Why did I agree to put myself through this? This is worse than I could have possibly fathomed. And I totally get that. And you're 100% spot on, Melinda. I think you've got a lot of common like-minded people on that comment.
Amen to that. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I never a million years would have ever thought I'd be where I'm at today. Unbelievable.
And we've got some good comments from Dolores as well, talking about fear is not real. Absolutely. It's conditioning.
Yep.
And you'll notice the fears are different based on where you grew up. There are absolutely cultural fears. There are fears by gender. There are fears based on the religion that you grow up in. How much of it is real? That's what you really need to ask yourself. Is this fear real? If I stand up and give this speech and completely urinate on myself, what is the worst that's going to happen? I mean, that's pretty disgusting. Maybe that's not.
I'm going to go with the worst thing would be the urine.
You're going to smell. You're going to become dirty.
Oh my God. Yeah.
No, I actually stepped up to the pulpit just a couple of weeks ago and started my sermon. It wasn't this Sunday, but it was the Sunday before that. And said, fear is not real.
Mm.
Fear is not real. The only place that it can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It's a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that cannot and may not ever exist.
Yeah.
Fear is a choice.
But what about physical fear?
That's real.
That's real. I was like, wait a minute.
You're chasing me and I'm scared to get caught. Well, it's like, I don't know. You could break that down so many different ways.
Well, if the true enlightened way.
Am I scared to get caught, or am I scared to fight you? Am I scared of what you're going to say? Am I scared of what's going to happen when I stop running? What am I scared of? Am I scared of you yourself?
All of those things.
I'm choosing to be scared of something, even in the moment. Now, if it's an animal that's going to kill you, right? If you're running from a bear in the woods, your fear is legitimate. Your fear is legitimate.
Unless you are Buddha or Jesus, and then you're like, okay, so I die.
Like, right. Or you decide to zen the bear to sleep.
You'd be like Kat. You're like, hold on, why are you angry? Let's talk about this.
Oh, that's funny. I've often wondered if I could do that. I have actually wondered, this is so stupid. I have actually wondered if I was in the ocean and I saw a shark, like, could I in some way impact its behavior? Like, because it's something I'm afraid of. I don't know, I don't know.
See why not. What was that show? The planets, there's like the 5 kids and they each had like a ring and they were planet fighters. I don't know. One of them was heart and he could speak to animals. Like he would just open up their heart and their messages, whatever they were feeling. So they would be attacked by an animal. You'd be like, whoa. He'd point his ring at it. Be like, oh, really? I just got a toothache. And then you'd calm it down. I could totally see you having that power. I don't know if anybody remembers what that show is.
That's what I'm getting for Christmas. A ring.
I don't see why not. I mean, it makes perfect sense. If they have the same fears that we do and they have the same experiences, they just show them differently. I think everybody's trying to, we're all writing in the comments boxes to get stuff to pay attention. Oh, we're almost out of time. You guys have any last caveats for the crew? Everybody who's watching. Thank you all so much for watching, and continue to share this out even after it's gone not live. That's not
Yes. We've enjoyed having you guys with us today so much. We appreciate you tuning in, coming to be in this space with us every week. It's a blessing. It's a blessing and a gift. So thank you. You can catch us every Monday. We're live at 11 Eastern, 2 Pacific. Did I get that backwards? 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. I am so blessed to have this beautiful crew to keep me on track. Hope you'll join us again next week, like every Monday. Let's try this again. 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Yes, 11 Pacific, 2 Eastern. Love you guys so much. Thank you again for being with us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.